Hello, I'm Robert, and you're welcome here in my busy little shop. On today's episode of What's on My Workbench, we're going to be making this belt. Now, you've seen me make the gunslinger pattern before. This is a twist on that pattern. It's going to have a lot more stitching. There's probably close to 60 feet of thread hand sewn into this belt. But probably more important than making the belt is the purpose for this belt. I'm sending this belt, by the time you see this, it's going on today, but it's the Hoosier Firewood Hysteria. Now, the event is to split wood that is used to sell and create funds to operate a campground for veterans there. It was created in honor of Vietnam veterans and to honor those that had died from their county. So this belt is going to be sent there, and it's going to be part of a raffle that they're doing to help raise funds as well. So I hope you enjoy following along today. I'm going over it and hitting each of the steps, but it's not like crazy in depth, so it shouldn't take that long to watch. I appreciate you being with me in the shop today. Let's get over here on the workbench and get this belt going. Okay, to get started, I picked out 2 strips of leather. I cut the complete hide into strips when I get a new hide out. And I've got it pulled down here. They were on the thicker side, so I stripped down the back of one of them a little bit so that I'm in the about 11-ounce range on the belt here. Then I skived down one end of the face, and that will form the fold over on this belt. So it'll be like that. So I'm going to lay out the gunslinger pattern and get this dyed. So next, I cut the strip of leather 10 inches longer than the belt length that I need. I think I mentioned, but I'm making a 38-inch belt. So I clip this belt bent over where the buckle is going to go, and I do that because I want this pattern to be centered on the back, and I find it easier to center it if I measure from the folded buckle end. And on a 38-inch belt, 19 would be the center, so I mark 19 as my center spot. On this pattern that I purchased for the gunslinger, I find this easier than the old pattern I was using. It's got a little mark on there to denote the center, so I'll line that up on there. That will be where the back belt loop's going to be, and I think it looks better if you line up there. You've got both of these spots here on either side of the belt loop on the back of the jeans, so I think it will look really nice that way. And now I need to just mark my pattern in here, and I'm just going to use my awl here and mark where this goes. I purchased this pattern from Pikes Peak Saddlery, so you can find them on the internet. It's pikespeaksaddlery.com. You probably can't see the marks, but I can see it to follow with the stitching chisel here. Now I want the pattern balanced on the belt. And what I mean by balanced is this is centered in the back. I want the pattern to end on the same place on your hips on the front. So to do that, I just need to keep the same number of patterns on the buckle end and do the same thing on the tip end of the belt. And once I've done that, I'm going to finish this belt off with this pattern here continuing on to the end of the belt. So it'll be a double line stitch past this end, and it'll be a double line stitch all the way out here on the tip end as well. A little more stitching, but it's really a nice look. I think it's worth the effort that the organization, these men and women are going to be donating their time there, so I think it's you know, easy for me to be able to do this, and then hopefully they enjoy wearing the belt. Once I've scribed in my pattern, I'll come through here, and at the tip of each diamond, the top and the bottom, I go ahead and I put a chisel mark in the same direction, and then I come through where the pattern crosses over to make that rounded pattern. I put in one there as well, so that when I create my stitching, I've got a nice clean X on each one of these spots. And I'll do that the length of the belt first, and then I come back in and I do the fill-in work on the belt with my two-tine. And then this distance between these areas here, if you take and you line that up, you'll see that, you know, sometimes it's off a little bit and sometimes it's not. This is actually pretty good here. So I'm just going to put in my two spot, like right there in the middle of it, here and there, around this diamond here. And even though I've got a scribe line, I'm really keeping an eye on where I placed my my tip spot, because I want that to, you know, line up and be nice and clean. And then I'll take my two-tine stitching chisel and I'll march along here following the curve of this pattern, and I want to make sure I don't creep outside of it, because I've got a straight stitch line to put in here as well, and I don't want those two to run into each other when I get to that point. When I get to this far end here, probably before I go much further, I'll mark it here lightly to see where it's going to be, and that's actually pretty good. So I'll continue here. Sometimes you have to, you know, make up or shorten that distance a little bit there to make it look right. So I'm going to go ahead and work my way down this belt. It is kind of slow going, because on this whole pattern, you're really just making one next hole at a time for the whole thing. But you get a rhythm going here, and, you know, it won't take me more than, you know, 10 minutes or 15 minutes to do this. If you're sewing this on a sewing machine, it's a good finish to, a good way to make the finish look right is when you stitch across here, try to get your needle here, even if you have to adjust a little bit, and when you come back around this direction, you really want to enter that same hole there, and it makes it really stand out and look nice. So I'll be back here in just a little bit. When I get up here to the tip, since we have the crossing point here, we want our stitches to come out right here, but we also have the tip. So I'll start here at the tip, and to me this is a focal point on the belt. So I'll start at the tip and I'll work back to here, and much like I did on this eye-shaped area here, I will make my adjustments down in here if I need to change that, so that my tip is you know, laid out the best. And then obviously here where it's straight, I can use my punch that does multiple holes at one time, so I'm not marching across here one at a time. But more importantly, it helps keep these stitches straight. And then I'll just work my way down to this point. Now that I've got all of the holes created here, I'm going to set up the dye, and I'm going to dye this. And if I haven't said already, I'm going to dye this in the color I call dark faded mahogany. Once I have it dyed and it's dry, I'll come back when I'm ready to put in the stitching here. We have to decide what color stitching we're going to use on this. So I let the dye completely dry on this strip of leather, and I went ahead and I put 1 coat of Resin on there to seal it. And I usually use Resin before stitching if I'm going to go with a lighter color thread. And I really wasn't quite sure yet what color thread I was going to use in here. This is kind of a design build thing. And I was trying to come up with a color combination that I thought would be popular at the event where this is being sent to, so that, you know, people would, you know, obviously maybe buy more raffle tickets to have an opportunity to have their name in the drawing for the belt. And so anyway, I ended up going with black because I figured if I went with white, then that might be something that, you know, wouldn't be as popular with some of the people at the event. And I do think it'll make a striking belt. Once I get it laminated up, there'll be another row of stitching that goes all the way around this belt. So this is the gunslinger pattern, and I think it's really good. And some may ask why I'm donating a belt that's in Indiana and I'm in Phoenix, but I'm a Hoosier, and you know, I think when people say, "Where are you from?" I always think of home, and to me, home is always Indiana, regardless of where, you know, I may be living. So I had an opportunity to help support the organization, and besides that, there's a lot of people that are supporting the organization that have supported me and my YouTube channel. The firewood community's kind of taken me in as a lost orphan here of YouTube channels, and so I appreciate your support. And it's fun to send this over there and create some interest in their raffle. So I'm going to finish up my stitching on this, and then I'm going to go ahead and set up, and we'll put some contact adhesive on the strips, and we'll layer up my 2-layer belt. And then I'll need to create the holes here so that I can sew the 2 layers together there. And I'm going to finish this off with a stainless steel buckle, but we'll see that in a little bit. Once I have the stitching completed on the middle of the belt, I go ahead and apply 2 coats of contact adhesive to the back of the belt. So you can see the stitching here. When that sets up for about 5 minutes, then I will laminate those 2 surfaces together. And then I'll burnish the 2 layers. And that makes a really good contact between those 2 layers. And you can't peel them apart. I went ahead and trimmed the liner to match the face. The next thing I need to do is to create my stitch line. I'm using the tool, instead of pulling the cut, I'm going like this and putting a little mark to make sure that I'm happy with where that lays on each one of these. I don't want to get too close to this outside edge when I round that, because it will obviously not look good if it's too close there either. I'll just cut a little groove around here that I'll follow with my stitching chisel. All right, so next I'm creating the stitching holes here along the outside of the belt. These will be the holes that hold the 2 layers together. And I say hold the 2 layers together, it's put together contact adhesive. It's not coming apart. So really all the stitching on here are you know, for a decorative purpose. And I'm just following along here. And the one thing that I think, it's not quite as obvious when the thread I'm using is black on this, but the stitches, I think they should line up across from each other on the side here. Once I get past this point, it really isn't relevant. But here, what I'll do is I'll check, every second or third time. I'll bring my square over here, transfer out to the outside here, put a couple little dimples in, and see how I'm lining up. And it's still pretty close here. So I'll just continue on. And I need to tip the top of the chisel out slightly here. I don't want the chisel to go this way, because when I do the round over on here, I don't want to end up cutting into any of these threads. And obviously maintaining a good spacing between these two areas here is important, I think, to making it look right. So I'm going to continue around the belt here, and when I get this side done, then I come to the tip and I work back this direction on this other side. So I'll finish up the stitching holes here, and I'll come back and show you a little bit of the process of sewing the outside of this as well. My intention is to leave the back of this the natural color. I like the two-tone look. To me, it looks more custom. And so I decided, before I did the stitching along the side here and had it in my stitching pony where I might get some rub marks on it, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the edges on this and burnish them, and I'm going to put a coat of Resin on the back of it, and that will help seal that. And I've had it before where I used Resin on there, sealed it, and then I picked up a little mark on there, and I was able to take some really fine sandpaper and sand through that stain, because there was a clear coat under it, and keep it that way. So we are definitely making some progress. I've worked on this edge stitching for a while now, and I'm actually down to the last probably 18 inches of leather. When I complete these stitches, I put this needle in and I give it a pretty good tweak like that, and it opens that up to get that other needle in there. And obviously leather's pliable, it closes right back up again. I've talked about it before, but trying to repeat every stitch in the same process, the same manner, makes for a consistent or more consistent stitch line. Belt is turning out nicely. There will be a spot in each of these diamonds that will really set the pattern off and really call some attention to the belt. But I did, as I think I said earlier, I chose black so that if the person ends up with this isn't a flashy person, it's not in your face. Now, obviously there's quite a bit going on with the stitching pattern here, so some would call that flashy, but keeping it black on this dark faded mahogany really tones that down. And you know, I may put black spots there. I have to really think on that. I made a belt, is the Western. I refer to it as the Blackout, and it was all black. Black stitching, black spots, black hardware. And I thought, you know, that's kind of a neat belt. You know, I'll make that. And I didn't think it'd be very popular though, but I had a gentleman saw that and called this January and ordered a handful of them. So it's funny, I've said before, I have to be careful about trying to build things that I think are the most popular. And I think that's probably, if you're building inventory to sell, you have to be careful about building things that are just, more or less what you like, because you may not be in the mainstream idea of what's popular. So I do intend to make some more of the blackout belts so that I have them on display at my artisan shows this coming up summer. So I'll finish this, and when we're ready to put hardware on, we'll slide back in here. I'm getting close to finishing this project. I need to get it in the mail today, so it gets there plenty ahead of time. I think it's looking pretty good. I just finished out tapping down my threads along the edge here. It helps set them into the leather and not have them raised up quite so much, and I think that helps protect them from wear. So I need to work on the assembly and getting ready for hardware here. All right, we're making progress. I guess we're always making progress, or hope we are. Top of the anvil. Now ready to install the hardware. I'm using a stainless steel 1.5" buckle here. Here's a loop that I made for it. And I'm going to use Chicago screws to put it together. I put a dab of clear fingernail polish on mine. It, I think, helps lock those threads in. And for a long time, all I used was a spot of Elmer's glue. Anything to help keep them from backing out, because believe it or not, they will back out regardless of getting them tight. So this just ensures that they don't come apart. And maybe just a small detail. I think the small details make a difference. There's always some, just out of place things. So as many details as you can focus on and make look great, I think it's important. And so my small detail on this, on the Chicago screws, is I always install them and tighten the screw down so that it faces the same way. I think it's really looking nice. The last detail is to put in the holes for the adjustment for wearing the belt. And I used to create those holes when I created the belt blank. But then when I attach the buckle, if it gets off slightly or whatever, then my holes may not be in the right place. So I've gotten to where that's the very last thing I do now. Everything's assembled, put together, and I'll put in my stitching holes. And I'm making this as a 38-inch belt. So if the wearer wears 36-inch jeans, you know, typical size jeans, not the ones that make you feel good because the sizes are off, then if you wear a 36-inch jeans, then it takes a 38-inch belt. And typically I put just 5, but I'm going to put 7 to give for a little bit extra variation of who could possibly pick this belt up and win this belt at the event. And it's not unusual. There's a lot of belt manufacturers, they put 7 holes. I typically put 5, unless someone asks for a belt with more adjustment. One last hole. Last thing is the test fit. Make sure everything works as it should. Oh yeah. I think that's a beautiful belt. Whoever ends up with this, hopefully they're happy with it. I'm happy with how it looks. Well, there you go. I believe it's a beautiful belt. I think that the stitches came out nice. I like the two-tone look of the natural color on the inside. I think the stainless steel buckle is a nice finishing touch on the belt. And obviously, stainless steel is gonna last you the life of the belt. I have some people that'll buy a belt like this and they're like, I'm afraid to wear it because I'm afraid to beat it up. I've got some belts that I've used on construction sites and such, and they really stand up better than you think they will. It's a durable belt. Will it stretch? I suppose it can a little bit over time, but this belt's almost, or it is 12 ounces. This one turned out to be 12 ounces. And you know, a typical belt you buy somewhere is going to be in the 7, 8, 9, maybe 10 ounce. Plus mine is made from 2 layers of top grain leather so that you've got the toughest part on both sides. So it's a very durable belt. Don't be afraid to wear this when you're out splitting wood if the person that ends up with this is a woodworker. I tell you what, I feel honored to be able to donate this belt to that cause, and I hope they have a great day and great weather. And the event's going on now as we speak. I hope you're having a great day. Please like, share, and subscribe.